Welcome back. All right, I want to talk about Florida today. The Stanley Cup Final starts on Wednesday. Of course, Florida being back in the Stanley Cup Final for the third straight year has brought back up all these questions about, well, taxes. They have this unfair advantage, which would be fair if they'd used it a lot, and I really don't think that they have. So I want to take a look at each player on the roster, so buckle yourselves in for a bit because we might be here for a little while. And by my count, of the 25 players on the board, 4 of them were drafted. So this kind of pokes holes in the idea that you have to have your homegrown talent, but there are exceptions to that. Like I said in a recent video, no two teams are made the same. 12 of them. 12 of them signed. So 12 of them signed as free agents. 8 of them were acquired via trade, and 1 of them a waiver claim, and a genius waiver claim at that. Now, the Florida Panthers went all the way to the Stanley Cup Final back in 1996. They were plucky underdogs that year who got swept aside by the Colorado Avalanche, who had just moved from Quebec and were quite happy to be in Denver, and they showed it by winning a Stanley Cup their first year there. Now, after that Stanley Cup Final run by the very blue-collared Florida Panthers, the expectation was, hey, these guys could be tough for a while, but they went out in the first round in 1997, and in fact, they didn't win a series again until 2022. So all of this discussion about this huge advantage that Florida has wasn't really a discussion point back then. Now, with the salary cap going up, and with where the salary cap's going to go, yes, you will have a conversation, I would think, over the next couple of years about how some teams are in tax-free states and how that gives them an advantage. We will have that discussion. But there's more than just taxes, because there's cost of living and all that fun stuff too. So by cost of living, Florida, on a chart that I found, was ranked 40th. Now I've seen 38th as well. So for cost of living, Florida, by comparison, is expensive compared to some of the other states that NHL teams play in. And Utah is listed as the best state to live in. So in terms of cost of living and everything, Utah's listed as the best state to live in. So someday, somehow, the Utah Mammoth are going to be a really good team, and people are going to say, well, see, it's the best state to live in. Players want to play there, which I guess that's fair. I mean, everybody's always wanted to go to Florida, but usually back before this current era, it was players at the end of their careers, which was kind of the joke of it, right? Oh, well, guy's ready to retire. He's signing with the Florida Panthers. So Florida's 9th in terms of best state to live in. Minnesota's ranked 4th. In fact, the Washington State's ranked 8th, and Massachusetts is ranked 10th. So when you look at everything, it's easy to focus just on the taxes and say, well, clearly, but if you have a good accountant, right? And I would think that NHL players can afford a pretty good accountant to find all of the deductions and bring your tax rates down. That's generally how that works, and especially for players who have a wife and kids. Their wife doesn't work outside the house. You have a lot of deductions there. And when you're making millions of dollars, every cent counts, right? Now, one thing that gets kind of brushed aside, too, is the fact that the guys calling the shots got changed out recently. And Bill Zito, while it feels like he's been here forever, the reality is he's hired as general manager by the Florida Panthers September 2nd of 2020. And it is since then that Florida's turned themselves around. The 2020 playoffs, they lost in the play-in round against the Islanders. They did not look good. It was very frustrating to me at the time because I thought, maybe Florida, maybe is an under... No, it wasn't going to happen. But Bill Zito came in and he has started making big changes. And he's not shy about making big changes. Paul Maurice hired as head coach June 22nd of 2022. Plenty of talk at the time about Maurice, I don't know, he quit on the Jets. And that first year, 2022-2023, things didn't seem to be going that well for a while. And then they went all the way to the Stanley Cup Final. They had a good run at the end of the season to make it into the playoffs. And then they went all the way to the final. So looking at this roster, and we're going in alphabetical order here. Uvis Balinskis signed as a free agent April 18th of 2023. Undrafted. And Balinskis, I believe, is 28. So other teams could have jumped in and got Balinskis. They didn't. His current cap hit's $850,000 for one more season. So is that a good cap hit? Sure. But, I mean, it's not like he was going to get a huge amount of money somewhere else. Alexander Barkov, the number 2 draft pick in 2013. So I've seen some comments about the Oilers. Well, the Oilers tanked to get where they are. Florida was pretty bad too. So they had the number 2 draft pick in 2013. They had the number 1 draft pick in 2014. So yeah, the Oilers then had the number 1 draft pick in 2015. But that number 2 draft pick, Alexander Barkov, has a very team-friendly cap hit of $10 million until 2030. And this is a team that has multiple players with $10 million cap hits. So are there guys who give him a bargain deal? Sure, but they're still spending money. It's not like Barkov's playing for $3 million because, well, the taxes. Sam Bennett, acquired in a trade from Calgary April 12th of 2021. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. There's a lot of talk about him making a ton of money and whether or not Florida's going to be able to afford to keep him. And that's a valid argument to have, is whether or not, and not only that, but let's just say Bennett comes in at, say, around 9 or 10 million. Are you better off just letting him go to market and look for the next Sam Bennett? And I would say with Bill Zito's track record, he's probably better off looking for the next Sam Bennett because he has been able to find some diamonds in the rough. Sergei Bobrovsky signed as a free agent with the team July 1st of 2019. So before Bill Zito came in, and keep in mind that there has been time over the years where Bobrovsky's contract was seen as bad. His play wasn't very good. There was talk about other teams didn't want that contract. Plenty of those conversations. And Bobrovsky's on a $10 million cap hit for 1 more year. But now they've won a Stanley Cup. They're in the final again. Nobody is complaining about Bobrovsky's contract. It's magic. Jesper Boquist signed as a free agent July the 1st of 2014. Nobody said, well, clearly getting Boquist, that's a huge signing for Florida. $1.5 million cap hit until 2027, and Boquist's been very good for them. But at a $1.5 million cap hit, would he be as effective somewhere else? My answer to that would be probably not. Aaron Ekblad, number 1 draft pick in 2014. He is a pending unrestricted free agent, and the discussion about Bennett we could have about Ekblad as well. I think Ekblad probably stays. His cap hit this season, I believe, was $7.5 million. And I remember when Ekblad signed that contract, a lot of people said he's not worth it. This guy's not very good. What is Florida thinking? Why would Florida sign him for that much money? And here we are. Gustav Forsling, claimed on waivers from Carolina, January 9th of 2021. Is this the biggest waiver claim of the last decade? Maybe. His cap hit currently $5.75 million until 2032. Now, you can look at that and say, well, that looks like a bargain cap hit. Kind of is. But if you think about it from Forsling's perspective, he was on waivers. He was bounced around the league. He ends up in Florida. He wins the Stanley Cup. Yeah, you're going to sign a contract that's probably pretty good for Florida because you want to make sure that they can build and keep players and stay in contention for the Stanley Cup. Jonah Gadjevich signed as a free agent October 16th of 2023. So it's not like everybody was clamoring for Gadjevich. He has a $775,000 cap hit for 1 more year. So he's on league minimum. He's making a league minimum contract. And he's a good 4th line option for Florida. I remember Gadjevich being in Vancouver. He would not be... He wouldn't likely be in their lineup with the way that the Canucks had everything this year as a whole of the discussion. But, hey, he's been quite good for Florida. AJ Greer signed as a free agent July the 1st of 2024. $850,000 cap hit for 1 more year. And, again, Greer kind of bounced around a little bit. So you can't look at AJ Greer and go, see, that's an example of how Florida uses taxes to their advantage. Nope. Seth Jones, acquired in a trade March 1st of 2025 with Chicago. And the cap hit being paid by Florida, $7 million until 2030. At the time of that trade, did everybody say, well, Seth Jones, that's a huge steal for Florida? Not really. There was discussions about, Florida's finally made a mistake. This Seth Jones is garbage. Seth Jones sucks. And now he doesn't. He's actually playing pretty well for Florida. And it is a $7 million cap hit until 2030 that Florida's on the hook for. Dmitry Kulikov signed as a free agent with Florida July 1st of 2024. Signed a 4-year deal, a $1.15 million cap hit. So the cap hit is reasonable, but the fact it's a 4-year deal, this is how this is supposed to work. You get a team-friendly cap hit for a player getting job security. And that's really what this contract is. So Kulikov, it's a bargain, but it's also a 4-year deal. And odds are, July of last year, other teams probably not offering Kulikov a 4-year deal. Anton Lundell was a number 12 draft pick in 2020. He signed for a $5 million cap hit until 2030. and Lundell's been excellent. But again, he's drafted and groomed from within. So, yeah, Florida pickup. Etu Luostarinen, acquired in a trade February 24th of 2020. That was the Vinny Trocheck trade. So that trade, when it took place, I remember a lot of comments about how, Trocheck, why would Florida move him, and these guys are getting back. But yeah, Luostarinen's been pretty good. $3 million cap hit until 2027, and he does his job well with the Florida Panthers. Everybody on this team has a role. They know their role, and they play it really well. Brad Marchand, who has fit in right away. He was acquired in a trade with Boston, of course. March 7th of 2025, he's a pending unrestricted free agent, and he wanted to go to Florida. He already had a contract signed, so he didn't want to go to Florida because he was paying less taxes. He wanted to go to Florida because he wanted a chance to win the Stanley Cup. And Florida's giving him an opportunity. They're in the final. Jacob Megna signed as a free agent July 5th of 2024. He's a pending unrestricted free agent, so just a one-year deal. I don't think anybody can argue, well, see, Megna. There's an example of a player they got that everybody else would have wanted. Nico Mikkola signed as a free agent July 1st, 2023. It's a $2.5 million cap hit for one more year. And I've said it recently, I'll say it again here. I thought that was pricey for Mikkola. He was kind of in and out of the lineup. It was the Rangers that had him last before Florida, right? I was really kind of surprised. He's fit in very well with Florida. They have excellent pro scouts. They go out, they watch these other teams, and they seem to know exactly who's going to fit what they need. And it's some smart management. Thomas Nosek, he was signed as a free agent July the 1st of 2024 and has been quite good since arriving. I think it's the best season he's had in a while. He was in Boston too. A lot of Boston flavor to some of these players here, of course. Sam Reinhart, acquired from Buffalo. Acquired in a trade July 24th of 2021. And nobody at the time said, well, there goes the Stanley Cup to Florida now with Sam Reinhart going there. And Buffalo fans were excited to get Levi back in exchange. Reinhardt's contract with Florida, $8.63 million cap hit until 2032. That cap hit, very likely lower than it would have been somewhere else. But as I mentioned before, players may very well take less money, not just for the taxes, but because it makes it easier for the team to stay competitive and to keep everybody around. And then you're not above Barkov and trying to argue why you get more money than Barkov, right? Barkov's $10 million cap hit, honestly, I think keeps everybody else a little bit lower because you can't make the argument you're better than Barkov. They'll just walk you out of the office at that point. Tell you to go have a lay down. Evan Rodriguez, signed as a free agent July the 2nd of 2023. He has a $3 million cap hit till 2027. And I don't remember a lot of discussion about Rodriguez going to Florida and what that was going to do. In fact, July the 2nd means that we had a live stream on July 1st of 2023 for free agency, and there wasn't a big outcry of, I can't believe Rodriguez isn't signed yet. He would have been on the board as here's a notable. And for Florida, he's been good. Mackie Samoskevich, a number 24 draft pick in 2021. He is a pending restricted free agent this summer. He'll probably get a nice, healthy, I would say 2, maybe 3-year deal. Probably 2-year deal. Probably get a couple of million a year, somewhere in that region. But yeah, I like Samoskevich. Nate Schmidt, he was signed as a free agent July 2nd of 2024. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. He was just let go by the Winnipeg Jets. So Nate Schmidt's bounced around the league, and I know there's numerous teams he's been through where fans have said, we need to get rid of this Schmidt guy. He sucks. And now he's on the verge of potentially winning a Stanley Cup. Nico Sturm, acquired in a trade with San Jose March 6th of 2025. He's just a rental. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. Matthew Tkachuk, acquired in a trade July 22nd of 2022. I was in Las Vegas at the time, so I remember having to do some videos outside in the heat about that trade and then about the signing as well. $9.5 million cap hit for Tkachuk until 2030. And if we look around the league, we can find some comparables and say Tkachuk's, definitely a bargain at $9.5 million usually. Although I thought this season offensively drops off a little bit. We'll see how the rest of his contract goes. But still, when you win the Stanley Cup, it doesn't matter. And this is the thing. There are players in Florida that didn't have fantastic years this year, but because of the way the team is put together, when Reinhart cools off, it's fine. You've got scoring from other parts of the lineup. And if the scoring's dropped off in general, it's okay. You got Bobrovsky in net and you still got really good defense. Florida can play every different style of hockey you want to play, which to me says good management. Nothing else. Good management. A good general manager that knows exactly what type of player he's looking for. Vitek Vanacek, acquired in a trade March 5th of 2025. He's a pending unrestricted free agent, backup goaltender. And Carter Verhaeghe. We round things out with Verhaeghe. Signed as a free agent October 9th of 2020. He currently has a cap hit of $7 million till 2033. And he had his struggles during the regular season as well, which are easily overlooked because they're in the Stanley Cup final and he's had a pretty good run during the playoffs. So everything's kind of forgotten there. But this is a team that's very well put together. And they don't have, outside of Barkov, just look at this roster and tell me which player you'd move to another team and it would immediately mean they're Stanley Cup favorites. They don't really have that. Like, Reinhart had an amazing start to the season, quieted down, but he's still a very good two-way player, right? You don't get nominated for the Selke unless you're a really good two-way player. But this is kind of how it works. Florida has a very well put together roster. And I have a hard time looking at this team and going, well, it's because they can, go out and get all these free agents. Because most of the players that they have that are core players either are drafted players or they're players they acquired in trade. Most of their free agent pickups have not been of the stellar variety outside of what? Bobrovsky, the contract everybody got mad about for years, the contract everybody laughed at for years. Well, Bobrovsky's not worth 10. Look at these Stanley Cup champions. They didn't have a $10 million goaltender. God, Florida's dumb. Yep, and that went on for years. And now that the team is good and they might win another Stanley Cup, fans want to knock the team down and make it sound like it's not good management that got them here, when it is good management that got them here. The example I've used is another non-tax state is Tennessee. We don't see Nashville putting together a roster like this. No offense to Nashville. And yes, Tampa went there 3 times in a row, and now they've lost early in the playoffs 3 years in a row. Vegas, did they get a Stanley Cup? Sure. Now they've been struggling in the playoffs. So definitely an argument to be made that it is an advantage for Florida. Sure, I will grant you that. And as the salary cap goes through the roof, it becomes a greater advantage for Florida. So I guess the bad news for fans that really think Florida's got an unfair advantage is it's going to become an unfair advantage in the coming years, and it could lead to star players going south. The one thing I always keep in my mind, though, and I'll close on this, is before we had the salary cap, we had teams that spent a ton more money than other teams had. It didn't generate success. It generally did not mean that a team was successful just because they spent more money. St. Louis spent a ton of money, didn't get anywhere in the playoffs. The Rangers spent a ton of money after that 94 Stanley Cup win trying to get back. Never got there. And the Oilers were cheap. They were flat out cheap, and they'd still make the playoffs, and they were still pretty good as underdogs. So having more money is an advantage for getting players, but for getting the right players, that's smart management. And it's not about spending the most money, it's about spending money wisely. I think Florida's done a pretty good job of spending money wisely. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.